Welcome to episode 169 of The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav, coming at you live from Fort Worth, Texas, and with me in the room, sitting 3-4 feet in front of me.
Oh yeah, I'm touching your foot.
It's the one and only Shane Beeps.
What's up, Stanislav?
Shane, good to see you again.
It's really good to see both of y'all. And like in full disclosure, I've seen you yesterday and today. It's Saturday.
Yeah.
So we've had 2 days of convention time, SCGCON time, and it's been nice to catch up. You know, I feel so far away from y'all, even though I see you every week. So it's nice to be face to face.
Also with us, the Godfather, sitting directly to my right. We're sharing a couch at long last. Love to sit with the one and only Dave Harbarger.
Hi, everybody. It's been 2 great days of me just getting trounced all over the place by lovely listeners and other people here in the Fort Worth area, and also enjoying some wonderful outdoor time at the Fort Worth Arts Festival.
That's right.
Let me hear you, Fort Worth Arts Festival.
Woo! Woo! Stan, I love how you completely ignored my slightly emotional, great to see you guys, and you're just like, let's move on to Dave.
Yeah, I like that too.
Shane, it's nice to see you. Sometimes I forget that we live so far away from each other now.
I mean, we do basically have a video chat every week. Remember the early days of coronavirus time when people were trying to do video chats and virtual happy hours? And we get to have that every week.
It's true.
It is always a happy hour. It's always really more like a happy 2 hours with us and the Dive Down and you all. Thanks for listening.
And unlike other happy hours, I don't drink while we record except coffee. So it's kind of like a happy little cafe au lait.
You know how I roll, so I'm not even going to comment. I don't have a can nearby to open.
On this week's episode, we are going to go over our free preview from Wizards of the Coast. We got a Streets of New Capenna spoiler card. We're excited to talk about it, break it down, consider some of its applications, and decide whether or not it's playable in our favorite formats. We're also going to talk about some of the other spoilers that we've seen so far from Streets of New Capenna, cards that have jumped out to us. It won't be an exhaustive discussion, but we're going to have fun together talking about cards and seeing if being in the same room will keep tempers down. And then finally, we'll wrap up with a little recap of our experience here at SCGCON Dallas, what we played, what we beat, what we lost to, and some of the friends we made on the convention hall floor.
And the meals we had. The meats we had, I was going to say, but I mean meals.
We should talk about the meats.
And the meals. The meaty meals.
But first, let's housekeep. Shout out to the newest patrons to join the Dive Down Nation. We got Cameron S., Andrew, with no last name or last initial.
Just the Andrew. We got the Andrew?
We got the Andrew.
Wow.
The Andrew.
Yeah. More Andrew than Andrew WK. This Andrew.
Wow. And last but not least, we also got Sean G. Thank you to all of you for joining. If you'd like to support the show, you can find us over at patreon.com/thedivedown. You can also support us while playing Magic with the Mana Trader subscription. With promo code TheDiveDown2022, get 15% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards in Mana Traders. It's the best way to prepare for SCG cons and other paper events because you can play with all the cards in any format, even Penny Dreadful.
With a free Mana Traders account, I'm sure you could play any Penny Dreadful deck you wanted.
Those Penny Dreadful cues were popping here at SCGCon. Not really, actually, but Pauper was.
Pauper was.
For what it's worth.
I think Pauper was more popular than Standard.
Let's not talk about Standard. We don't talk about Standard.
Yeah, let's talk about that briefly because it was weird how little people were playing Standard. maybe it's not.
I don't know, but for scale, everybody, most of the modern events seem to have between 40, 60, 80. These are the side events.
Yeah.
Kind of number of people. I think the Standard one that I saw had 24.
That's the biggest one you saw?
I think so.
Our Pioneer one this afternoon had 48. Mm-hmm. And that was the afternoon Pioneer. And yeah, so Standard is not what people are playing in paper, or at least here. So
we don't talk about Standard.
I mean, we don't.
No.
So
Lynn, I know you play Magic. Get at us. Lin-Manuel Miranda, sponsor our podcast.
Well, I would love that. And also cast us in your next film.
Yeah, I mean, the McElroy's gotten trolls too.
That's right. Why not the Dive Down over at In the Heights 2?
Much anticipated. I can't wait for the sequel.
there's one last way that you can support the show, and that's with Barrister and Man.
Whenever I'm traveling again, and I remember how last time I traveled, I was like, I just want my Barrister and Man products. I don't have them, and I'm sad about it.
There's something with the water here in Dallas. There's something in the water in Fort Worth where my hair on my face is so puffy.
Is it puffier than usual?
Puffy. My eyebrows are tentacly, and I have nothing to tame them. I left my beard oil and eyebrow oil at home. Barrister Man, please FedEx me a bottle tomorrow morning so I can oil down before I get on my flight home.
Overnight. So yeah, the Barrister Man, if you're not aware, if it's the first time you're listening to us for some reason, you can get soaps, shaving soaps, fragrances. What else is there? Aftershave balms, aftershave lotions. I don't know if those are the same thing or not, but all the products. What I like most about the products is that they are seasonal, that they come in cycles, that stuff sort of gets reprinted from the vaults. It's, there's always the stuff that's always there to be purchased, and then special stuff comes out and people get excited about it. What's the newest one? It's the Whatsits.
Yeah.
Behold the Whatsits?
The Dr. Seuss inspired.
Yeah, it's Behold the Whatsits, right?
That's my least favorite Ben Stiller movie.
I'm looking forward to maybe getting a sample or purchasing some of that. So if you're interested in that, if you have a person or yourself that you think would like products like that, I mean, there is stuff for any home. Go over to Barrister and Man, MANN, use the purchase coupon code, the Dive Down 2022, all one word. We know a lot of you out there have used it. We appreciate that. Will appreciates it. And we appreciate all of you all listening to this. And any way you want to support us, we're thankful.
All right, let's get to one of the most exciting moments in the history of us making this show. We got a free preview from Wizards of the Coast from the newest set, Streets of New Capenna. It's card number 52.
Ooh, what an auspicious number.
Indeed it is.
I'm excited, so excited that the couch is shaking right now with my joy. Stan, are you going to do the honors of reading it? I think that I am willing to let you do that.
I feel like you've worked the hardest for this, Stanislav.
Out of the way.
Stanislav is coming through. Out of the way, everybody.
No, that's the name of the card. It's called Out of the Way.
One of our worst bits ever, but here it is. Yes, the card is called Out of the Way. Has a title like some of those great cards from the AFR set as well, where they're kind of like phrases instead of card titles.
Phrases, so hot right now in Magic.
Phrases.
Out of the Way, 3 and a blue for an instant. This spell costs 2 generic mana less to cast if it targets a green permanent.
My least favorite kind.
Mm-hmm.
And it reads, return target non-land permanent and opponent controls to its owner's hand. Draw a card. And the flavor text is, you bore me.
Do you think that this is Blake subtweeting us by telling, because with that flavor text, because we asked so many times for a preview card, and he was like, fine, you bore me. Here it is.
I hope not. I hope that's not the case. I will say, if you're listening to the show, chances are you may have seen this card already spoiled. It was spoiled by us officially on Monday. We put out a video. Check out our various social media feeds to see a video of us using this card in action. And it occurs to me, in the video, we were only targeting green spells, but that's not even necessarily the case. Green just lets you get the discount. You can target any spell with this.
Not any spell, though.
Any permanent.
Any non-land permanent. And I think that's a big deal about this particular card compared to other cards that came before this. So, you know what I like to call this? I like to call this a submerge effect.
Oh. Interesting.
Perhaps you might be familiar with the card Submerge from, I believe, let me look real quick. It's from Nemesis. And it is a card that costs 4 generic and a blue. It's an instant, and it says, if an opponent controls a forest and you control an island, you may play Submerge without paying its mana cost. And this says, put target creature on top of its owner's library. Mm-hmm. This is a card that sees play in Legacy at different times.
Yep.
It gets free. It doesn't draw a card, but there's been many cards that do things like this ever since. I believe Submerge was basically the first one that was this kind of blue on green bounce hate kind of card.
Right. But this is a little more universal.
Well, this, you can also use Submerge to target anything. It's just the freeness of it.
Correct.
The cost reduction is from green.
Yeah, what are the closest things we found? Like an Into the Royal and like the clone card of that?
So Into the Royal would be your, and Blink of an Eye would be your kind of current design era of Magic versions of this card, except those ones use Kicker to be able to add the card drawing ability, where this one always has the card drawing ability on it. But the way it's templated is that, this is essentially supposed to be a blue versus green sideboard card of some kind or another, because you don't really want to pay for this. I guess you might, but you really don't want to, right?
Yeah, so this is a classic color hoser effect. We often see cycles of these, especially in contemporary sets. I mean, I guess those go way back, color hosers, right?
Well, they go back to Nemesis
with
Submerge, and there's been many between here and
even
there
in
as well.
Alpha and Beta, there was like Destroy All Islands and things like that.
Sure.
Destroy All Planes.
Tsunami, they were land-based hate.
Yeah.
They weren't as close to this. Bouncing wasn't quite as much of an effect in Alpha Beta. I mean, Unsummon was there, but...
Sure. So let's talk about the actual power level of this card, because I feel like in Modern, I doubt that this is like a Modern playable card.
Why, though? What's the biggest problem, I think, anyway?
Well, it's too expensive and too narrow.
It's also competes with and Pioneer, it competes with this card too, and that card is Aether Gust.
Yes.
And Brazen Borrower.
Well, Brazen Borrower sure is different too, because it has it always has a cheap bounce ability, but it doesn't draw a card. But Adventure's kind of like drawing a card,
right?
But
you know the card you're drawing,
right?
You're drawing a Brazen Borrower.
Yeah, and when it comes to Aether Gust puts this on top of someone's library, which is a better effect.
Yeah.
You don't draw a card off of Aether Gust, but you do kind of get to submerge them by having the permanent go on top of their library as well. The other problem with this card, I think personally, is that Aether Gust targets spells, and it targets red spells as well. So while Aether Gust literally can only target green and red spells, it's still always 2. You're generally only going to use this card in times when you can use the cost reduction effect. And Aether Gust does sort of draw a card by making them have to redraw the card that you target with it. So in my opinion, that's kind of the story of this card, unfortunately.
Yeah, so it's up against Aether Gust. It's a fairly narrow restriction in terms of you don't want to cast this for 4 just to bounce and draw. But it's an interesting card. Stan, do you have any more insight on this where you're going to want to convince me that this is maybe even Pioneer or Historic playable?
The thing about cards like this, where it costs 1 and then it has a cost reduction effect, we see cards like this see play in Modern Cascade decks because you want to be able to have interaction that doesn't non-bow with your Cascade spells. And to Dave's point, something like this competes with Brazen Borrower in that case, or Dead and Gone is another card in that space that lets you have cheap interaction even though the CMC is pretty high.
How much does the bounce mode of Dead and Gone cost? It costs 3. It's 2 generic and a
red.
And
that's gone.
And it's any target.
Correct.
It's any creature.
Yes.
So this one does non-land permanents.
Yes.
Which is maybe something worth keeping an eye on for that sense.
Perhaps. The problem is, though, I don't know if there's enough specific green permanents that a Cascade deck would want this, but at least it plays by the rules of that deck, where you can have 2 mana interaction that replaces itself, buys you a little tempo, clears the way for your Rhinos to get through, which I think is pretty key.
I mean, one of the issues with this card, too, is that in contemporary card design, there's so many Mull Drifters. And so lots of cards come down with an ETB effect. They're doing something. There's spells stapled on bodies. So if you're bouncing a creature back to in hand or something like that, then frequently you're just giving your opponent some value. You might have seen we were playing with creatures like that in our spoiler video.
It was hilarious.
I laughed.
Yeah, they call it a bit.
Oh.
But yeah, I mean, I do think that that's kind of, from my reading of this after thinking about this card for about a week, I think the bottom line really is maybe it goes into Cascade or another deck that's trying to abuse mana cost in the way that Cascade does by having it have a higher number in the upper right-hand corner than what it actually costs you to use it. And maybe there's a metagame where you might have really, really wanted Aether Gusts or something, and you decide instead you'd rather have out of the way in a similar swap because you're trying to Cascade.
Maybe this is something you can look to if you're in a blue deck and you're really struggling to deal with Tarmogoyfs.
Yeah, why not?
I mean, although, like you said, Brazen Borrower does a great job of that too.
Why not 8 Brazen Borrowers?
Why not?
Why not a Brazen Borrower that replaces itself?
8 Borrower is my favorite deck. So.
Yeah.
Well, I think we gave this card its due. Thanks a ton, Wizards, for thinking of us and getting us in, hopefully, in the spoiler family. And it's been fun.
Yeah. Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Yes, and we certainly appreciate all of the Dive Down listeners and fans that have joined us on this journey. We've talked about this being a milestone that were working towards, and a lot of people would reach out to Wizards on our behalf. They would cite our names in sources in surveys. We never really condoned or asked for that behavior, but we appreciate it, and we know it came from the heart. All right, with out of the way, let's talk about some of the other cards that have jumped out to us from the new set. We've got Scryfall sorted by mana value.
Yeah, it is Saturday, April 9th at 6:08 p.m. Central Standard Time. And to the best of our knowledge, these are the cards that have been shared with the world so far.
We're in daylight time, by the way.
Whatever. It's 6:08 p.m. So who wants to go first? Who's got a card that they think is interesting to talk about first?
I'm looking at most of these for the first time, so bear with me.
Can I throw out a weird one just to whet our appetite? A little card that I don't think is good but is notable?
Please.
How about the series of common lands called Racer's Ring and Skybridge Towers and things like that? They enter the battlefield tapped. They are dual lands, and they have a 4 mana and tap activated ability to sack them and draw a card.
I'm surprised you're calling them out. You think these can see play?
I just think it's interesting that they put the draw a card ability on a series of commons that I don't think they're super powerful, but I do think that that ability is pretty powerful, even though it's really expensive. And I wonder a little bit if it's maybe a budget option for people who are trying to figure things out or something else.
I mean, they're definitely better than the gain land that we typically see in the spot for
Right.
limited. It's definitely a powerful limited ability. And I like the fact that it gives you something to do as a mana sink, which is, again, something they're typically trying to do for limited games, especially best of one limited, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, this is a set of very playable cards in Modern. Of course, the activated ability is absurdly cheaper in Modern. The one colorless to sacrifice it and draw a card is crazy cheap, Horizon Kennedy. But it's a series that people have been clamoring to have finished in Modern. I just think it's interesting that it exists on a common, and maybe, there's some way to abuse it in Pioneer or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm down. I like these lands. I especially like them in limited. And if anyone sees a way to use them in their constructed decks, more power to them for using a common land and not paying $20 for the late fuse. Mm-hmm. Single blue mana instant. Counter target non-creature spell. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. And we all know what those do, I hope.
So 1 mana negate.
Yeah, that's a good card. This is a card. If you are up against a combo deck that wants to cast 1 spell to win, then they might. Who cares if they get more mana? Oftentimes, if you stop that 1 spell, it's people who play Thoughtseize know where if they can get that out at the right time, then sometimes that destroys the opponent's whole game plan. This you don't have. You don't have to do it ahead of time. You can just be sitting there waiting for it and have just 1 mana open. If they're not expecting an offer you can't refuse, then that's something that they're going to have to think about more.
It is a better late game than Spell Pierce.
Yes, for sure.
Which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
I don't want to...
It's sort of like a reverse Spell Pierce.
Isn't it?
It's you don't get the chance to pay 2, but we give you 2.
That's
mana.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think this has some options. It's again... It's one of those things where it's like a sideboard card, almost certainly. And the issue in Modern, especially, is that we have 15 sideboard cards.
Well,
so it's like...
Murktide's playing 2 Spell Pierce main these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Spell Pierce hits... Does Spell Pierce only hit non-creature spells?
Yeah.
It's the same.
Exactly.
It's a conditional negate, essentially, which is what this is, too.
For sure.
I mean, Spell Pierce is a great card. And I think that this is extremely risky of a card, right?
Yeah.
Giving someone
Yes.
resources is extremely risky. But it's 1 mana. There might be a deck that doesn't. I almost wonder if this is used offensively by a combo deck that does not care if they give you extra mana. Like they want 1 mana, shut down counter spells more so than the other thing, and maybe they can't load up with enough force negations. They don't have enough blue cards to play all those force negations. But if they're like, I want to make sure that whatever you try to do to stop my combo doesn't go through for 1 mana.
Yeah, that's actually really astute, Dave. Where it's like, it's a protective spell because there's no timing restrictions. There's nothing like that. It's just like, I'm going to resolve this living end.
Right.
Whether you like it or not.
Yeah. I mean, the tricky part there is that someone is interacting you at instant speed and they go Spell Pierce and you go an offer you can't refuse. And that resolves. They get 2 more mana and then they go Counterspell.
Right.
and so.
Yes, that's the thing I'm a little worried about.
It's problem. I don't think it's overtly powerful, but you can't beat the mana cost.
So in your situation, though, a deck like Belcher, for instance, is playing Pact of Negation.
Right.
And I think if you're playing a combo deck where you are winning on the spot, unlike
Pact,
unlike Living End, where you're ostensibly winning, but you may not actually have the KO there, Belcher wants to win as soon as it does its thing.
Right. So I don't know. I mean, I think that there's possibilities. It's definitely an interesting design card and feels like it's got a power level that's worth exploring. But the 2 treasures might be just way too high of a benefit.
If it was 1 treasure, I would think this is a snap sleeve.
Yeah.
But the fact that it's 2 treasures and in Modern, that just enables counterspell potentially, I think that's scary.
That it makes the same amount of difference in any format. Mm-hmm. Basically, the difference between 1 mana and 2 mana of giving you resources is huge.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, importantly though, Pact is in Historic, but Pact is not in Pioneer, and there are combo decks in Pioneer. So there's things when you want a combo to resolve and you're playing in blue or have access to a blue splash or something like that.
Yeah.
I can see this being a Pact of Negation type spell. I can also see it being an anti-combo spell potentially. And so I think this will see some play in formats that I find myself playing at some point.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would mention here is that there is a little card called Swan Song.
Oh, that's a classic.
That already exists in a number of these formats. And what Swan Song does is counter target enchantment, instant, or sorcery, and then you give them a creature. Now,
a 2/2.
Yeah, flying.
It flies. Rated 4 out of 5 stars on Gatherer.
Oh, yeah. We love the community ratings on Gatherer. It's got 95 votes since original Theros came out a slim 10 years ago. If you compare it to a comp like that, having less target restriction certainly makes an offer you can't refuse better. But, it's not like Swan Song sees a lot of play, and what your opponent gets in exchange is much, much worse in Swan Song than it is in an offer you can't refuse. So I think if you look at comps in the formats, it doesn't look good for an offer you can't refuse, but I still think it's an interesting card to consider.
All right. Anything else that was catching your eye from the more recent set of spoilers?
I would love to talk about Strangle.
Okay.
Single red sorcery. Strangle deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker.
When I read this, I thought it said player or planeswalker, and I was like, oh, it's just, another lava spike.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's not the case.
I was going to say, that card would be a slam dunk because people would just be loading that up sure.
That would just be potentially replace Skewer or something like that.
Well, I don't know about in Modern for sure, but it would certainly make something like a Pioneer Burn deck have one more 1 mana 3 damage spell would be sorely appreciated in that particular deck. I do think that in Pioneer, this card might be appreciated as well in a way. I think it exerts a little bit of unfortunate pressure on the Pioneer format. That's kind of too bad, where I think people were getting kind of friendly with the idea that 3 toughness creatures were pretty... That was kind of like the floor.
We're low resilient.
Yeah, and okay, if you want to outpace red removal, you play 3, and that's like how everybody evaluates creatures in Pioneer.
Good point.
This it moves that goalpost, so to speak.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that, but you're right. That's a pretty fundamental shift in the toughness required to survive red removal at 1.
The thing I can't quite tell is whether or not you can play any copies of this in your main deck in your red spell.
Probably not. Because it doesn't do anything if they're not playing creatures. And against planeswalkers, it's like, at that point, do you really want this rotting in your hand for like 3 or 4 turns? Is like you wait for them to play a Planeswalker down or something like that?
And it's likely not even killing that walker.
No.
It kills Wandering Emperor. Does it kill Kaito?
Kaito Shizuki. I mean, you plus it usually.
Okay.
I don't think that. I mean, it's not like Strangle's not going to get played in Modern. I don't know if Kaito's going to get played in Pioneer. So I don't know if these are going to appear in the same zone anyway. But it'll hurt. Like I'm a little bit out of touch with Pioneer. Is Teferi banned in Pioneer?
Teferi 3 is.
Teferi 3 is. Yeah. Okay. So that's what I thought. But there's some of those that I think still make it worth potentially considering this as a main deck. Now, does this go in a burn deck? I don't think so. I think it kind of goes in a more mid-rangey red deck where creature removal is more premium to you, where maybe you're out of slots from Bloodchief's Thirst and Fatal Push, and you want even more removal.
Yeah.
Like I've been playing a lot of. I played only Rakdos midrange and Pioneer this weekend, and I can see an option where, depending on the amount of creatures, the toughness of those creatures, like where you could have a couple of these in your sideboard, where like I need to be tagging 3 toughness creatures that might be out of Fatal Push range or just want more Fatal Push type effects, and I can see that being valuable in the Rakdos midrange style as well.
Yeah.
Or like a Jeskai Control, or Blue-Red Control, or Arc-Light Phoenix, where they, post sideboard, you want to shore up your weaker matchups, and so I think it's definitely a great piece to add to the kit of parts of Historic, Pioneer, things like that.
Can we talk about another weird 1-mana spell? Grisly Sigil.
Yeah, this is a weird spell.
Okay, so this costs a single black. It's a sorcery, and it has Casualty 1. This is the first time we're going to talk about the Casualty mechanic, which I think is primed to be a pretty powerful mechanic, one that has a lot of potential. And what this card does is it says, as you cast this spell, you may sacrifice a creature with power 1 or greater. So that's what the 1 with Casualty is. When you do, copy this spell, and you may choose a new target for the copy. Then it says, choose target creature or planeswalker. If it was dealt non-combat damage this turn, Grisly Sigil deals 3 damage to it, and you gain 3 life. Otherwise, Grisly Sigil deals 1 damage to it, and you gain 1 life. Okay.
Yeah.
This card is weird.
It's
really weird.
Really weird.
So it's black burn drain, basically, that targets creatures and planeswalkers. So you can use it as a removal spell, essentially. And the thing that's interesting about it, I think, is if you look, these kind of effects are not generally constructed playable, but I'm taking a look at it because it's 1 mana. And because you can use this in something if you're generating a lot of tokens where you Grisly Sigil, the first copy does 1 damage and you gain 1 life. And then the second copy does the 3 damage and 1 life because you already did damage to the same creature. Mm-hmm. So for 1 mana, if you're playing a deck that enables this somehow with things you want to sacrifice, for example, or tokens or things like that, Red Black Anvil, that kind of stuff. Now, that deck has a lot of options for removal already. Mm-hmm. You can do a little bit of creature kill and life gain, which can be helpful.
Yeah, cards like this make me a little more interested in Bitter Blossom.
Mm-hmm. For Modern, anyway?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Oni Cult Anvil is plenty good enough in Modern potentially as well.
Sure.
And the Wombo combo here is either you Lava Dart a couple of things and then you double hit them with Grisly Sigil so that you are really doing it by getting a 2-for-1 off of this essentially. Or there's combat damage and blocking, which doesn't happen that much in Modern but can happen in Pioneer, and then you're cleaning up the board afterwards with Grisly Sigil.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that actually makes me nervous about a card like this is that either A, it forces you to spend 2 cards to answer one of your opponent's cards.
Right.
Or B, you're spending a card to kill a creature that you had to, attack into. And it's not even an instant, so you can't use it off blocks.
Right.
I think it's a little awkward. If it was an instant, I actually think it would be a bit stronger.
I think if it was an instant, it might be too good.
As a sorcery, I'm a little more reticent.
Yeah.
And the card that actually makes me think of the most is a card from Neon Dynasty. Very different effect, but it's You Are Already Dead, which is if a creature is dealt damage, you kill it.
Right.
And it lets you draw a card.
Right.
And that's a 1 mana instant.
Right.
And sometimes I wonder whether or not you would rather play something like that in the role of this.
Maybe.
In Constructed.
Yeah, which you
Since
would
that
never
actually kills a creature and a cantrip.
and you would never play it in Constructed anyway, so maybe
Exactly.
maybe it's just not worth talking about in that sense. But I still thought it was interesting, and it gives us an intro to Casualty.
Speaking of casualties, let's talk about Unlucky Witness. At red, single red, creature, human citizen, dive down citizen. When Unlucky Witness dies, exile the top 2 cards of your library until your next end step, which would be the end step. You may play one of those cards. So this gets us a light up the stage type effect. It's play, not cast, and I just think this slots right into red-black sack decks that we're seeing thriving and growing and shifting over the past few weeks.
One of the other things I really like about this card is that it's templated until your next end step, so you can chump block
Yes.
and then get cards off of that
Right.
you can actually play next turn.
Yeah, so you really want to have it die on your opponent's turn so that you, whatever method you use to kill it, you get to untap, get your mana back, and
Potentially,
go from there.
I like Shane's point, though. It can be good on either turn, because if you're sacking it yourself with your own thing, then you might be able to get the value immediately, or you can get the value after you've drawn a card, and you've essentially drawn 3 cards for the turn.
Yeah.
I mean, like in these experimental synthesizer decks, these Oni Cult Anvil decks, there's already a good amount of ways to be seeing a lot of cards out of your deck and getting spell selection and getting card advantage. And I think that this just makes total sense in those style of decks. We've seen how annoying a card like Stitcher's Supplier can be, where, like you said, Stan, it makes chump blocking, it makes attacking into it kind of annoying, where you're like, do I really want to enable their strategy by letting them block with this card? And do I want them to start filling their graveyard with stuff they might be able to cast back? And I think this does something similar, where you might be able to get some chip damage in because they don't want to block it. You might be able to stymie their attacks early on because they don't want to get that kind of card advantage. So I think that this will be seeing some play, probably more in like the Pioneer and Historic end of things, because the Rakdos sack deck is still kind of a thing in Modern. I'm curious to see how it continues to develop, but the loss of Luris really did hurt that deck.
Yeah. I will say, when I first read this card, I didn't realize that it said you may play one of those cards, which I think makes it significantly less good.
50% worse.
Yeah, maybe more so, but I think it makes it a little bit harder to determine if you want this to be one of your sacrifice targets in those decks or not. Maybe, maybe not. I think it's tough to say at this point because, for example, Synthesizer draws you 2 cards.
No, it says, it does draw you 2 cards over the course of its existence. Like when it ETBs, you exile and may play it, and then when it leaves, you can do the same thing.
Right.
So, yeah. I mean, I don't think this is like a lights out amazing card. I do think that's just like anything that's 1 and gets you card advantage, and it's a creature.
Yeah.
It's not just a random little artifact. Like, this has a lot of little incidental value.
I totally agree. Just a little less powerful than I thought when I first read it. So make sure you keep that in mind when you're thinking about it. Stan, anything you're thinking about?
Stan, let's have a little chat about a little chat.
Oh.
Okay.
You wrote about this card, Stanislav, didn't you?
Well, it was one of the only cards I was given to write about.
Yeah, so what did you say in your Polygon article, and how can we tell you how wrong you were?
I said it. I put down the gauntlet. I immediately said this is the best blue card in the set.
Oh, perfect. Can we say what it does first?
Nah.
A little chat. A single generic and a blue for an instant that has casualty 1. Look at the top 2 cards of your library, put 1 into your hand and the other on the bottom of your library. So if you can sacrifice a 1 power creature to this, you get C2 draw 2, or C4 draw 2, basically.
Yeah.
Kinda.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
The weird thing about all these casualty cards is that they're going to be in Grixis colors because casualty is a maestro mechanic.
Mm-hmm.
And we have these red-black sack decks, but do we have any decks in blue that have sack fodder? And that is, I think, what's going to determine the playability of something like this in any format, is whether or not you have like dinky blue things or dinky things in any color, but access to blue that actually makes you want to sack something away.
Be prepared for a litany of young pyromancer based decks that people are going to be brewing up, where it's like, can I cast something to make casualty fodder, et cetera, et cetera. And I mean, if those dreams are real, I'm there.
Yeah.
Yeah, that seems like a lot of fun to me. I mean, I do agree that there's going to be a lot of people trying to make Young Pyromancer work again, and maybe it will.
Or Seasoned Pyromancer. Old Pyromancer.
Seasoned. Yeah, seasoned maybe. Let me tell you, speaking of Seasoned Pyromancer, I played a good amount against people who were playing a Seasoned Pyromancer this weekend, and Spyro is back. That is a good card again.
He's been in the gym day in and day out, never skips leg day, definitely never skips ab day.
As we can tell. Any other 2-drops you all are interested in? Or
you're hovering over Gala Greeters on your computer, Dave, and looking at me and mentioning 2-drops, and I feel like you're inviting me to talk about why this elf might be good.
I mean, if you think it's good, I'd love to hear what you think. It's an elf.
Here's the interaction with this card that I think is interesting.
Well,
Okay.
let's read
Shall
the card
I read it first?
Please. It's 1 and a green for a 1/1 elf druid, and it has Alliance.
So it's the first time we're talking about Alliance. What does Alliance do?
Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get an effect. And the effect is going to be different on each Alliance creature.
Okay. So it's just basically just a different creature ETB. It's a triggered ability
When
on
another
that creature.
Correct, yeah. And in the case of Gala Greeters, you can choose one of 3 things that hasn't been chosen this turn. Mm-hmm. And one is put a 1/1 counter on Gala Greeters. 2 is create a tapped treasure token, so delayed land. And 3 is gain 2 life.
Yeah. The big thing about this card is that a lot of times when they've done mechanics like this before, it might have said non-token creature.
Yes.
And this one does not say non-token creature.
No, it does not.
Yeah.
Raise the alarm, babies.
We have War Master.
Yeah.
Which is making tons of elves, sometimes even on your opponent's turn if you have a Coco or if you're able to activate
Warmaster.
Imperious Perfect.
So good.
Right? This plus Dwinnen's Elite lets you get 2 of those Alliance triggers because you get the Dwinnen's Elite and the token. So yeah, I think maybe this is something that elves decks can play with as a value engine in particular. Maybe out of the sideboard to deal with like burn decks because you want to gain a little bit of life. And eventually it turns into like a big threat if it's not removed on the spot.
Yeah, I guess my real question is like, are these triggered effects that great?
Right.
Like gaining 2 life, I feel like is the real like secret sauce here. Like if you're up against an aggressive deck or a burn deck, then you probably want to, if you gain 4, 6, 8 life out
10?
of this, like, well, 10,
12?
17.
I mean, that's times 2.
Can you get 17 on this?
No.
You can get 16 or 18.
So the real problem is like this would have to remain on the board for a length of time to allow you to do that. So because you can't choose the same mode twice. So even if you made 3 creatures, you can't choose gain 2 life 3 times. So in that, it is a lightning rod in that sense. But do you want to play a 2 mana 1 life lightning rod?
I think it's all about the treasure tokens, honestly. It's just ramp.
They're tapped. I mean,
They're tapped, but I mean, it just preps you to be able to play more cards on future turns. Like,
Sure.
I think the order many people are going to do here is treasure, gain life, put a counter on it if they get 3 triggers off in a turn. But the nice thing is you get to change it.
right. It depends on the matchup, the board state, where you are in a game, and whether you even decide to put this in your 75.
And clearly they think this card has chops because they made like a dozen different arts in different languages. They'll be like box toppers.
So they made, it's the promo, and they made them different by region, which I think is just cool and fun. This art, I mean, look, I think this art is fun. I don't know about each individual inspiration for each individual region's piece of art.
Yeah.
But more props to the Wizards, art department for being able to kind of nail down a fun way to celebrate something different about this set. I like the German ones the best. They have this fun like cabaret style going on. They're on a microphone and stuff.
Gala Begruber.
A Grusser.
Yeah, that's an S set.
That's 2 S's.
Yeah, 2 S's. I thought they got that out of the
So did I,
language.
but we don't know much about German.
We don't know much about German.
All right, so the 2 that stand out to me that are still in the 2 CMC zone that we can talk about or not. But it's more casualty cards. I keep looking at the cards that have casualty and going, how good is this? Could this be good? Is it good? Make disappear. Mm-hmm. The instant that's a generic in a blue that has casualty 1 and says counter target spell unless its controller pays 2 is interesting to me. It goes from being smaller than a mana leak to being bigger than a mana leak.
To being a mana beak.
Being a mana beak. But the other thing is they're 2 separate instances. So it's kind of like Flusterstorm in that way to be like, you can't force of negation both of them
right
with a single spell, which I think is interesting. And then Rob the Archives, which is a sorcery that's a generic and a red casualty 1 that says exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn. You can pop this off and get 4 cards if you sacrifice a token for it.
Young Pyromancer.
Right? I mean, of course, it's much worse that it's this turn, but if you have the mana going.
So let's talk about Rob the Archives first. I want to react to that first. The fact that it costs 2 mana, I actually think is pretty mana intensive.
Yes.
That there's some tension with the casualty effect there, because since you only have until the end of the turn to use those cards that you revealed, you are potentially getting into territory where you're looking at 4 and just drawing / casting 1.
But that's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. But is it better than having an extra body on the board?
I mean, if you have Young Pyromancer,
right.
It's fine because you cast this and it just makes another you cast this, sack a token, and it makes another token.
Right.
Not that I'm saying, like, Young Pyromancer, you are not going to beguile me again with your goggles. But, it instantly replaces itself.
Yeah, no, that's fair. There's other cards that make tokens. There's the Witch, the 3-mana Witch, Sedgemoor Witch.
Sedgemoor Witch.
Isn't there that blue one from Guilds of Ravnica that makes the bird tokens?
Yeah, that one costs 5, though. That's pretty expensive.
Oh.
The Witch is a little bit more. The Witch has seen play in places like, I think, Legacy. It's seen play because of the ward ability and stuff.
There was a minute where it was seeing play in red-black mid-range and modern.
Yeah. I mean, there's our old favorite that everybody loves to talk about. There's Monastery Mentor. Mm-hmm. If you want to think about a card that has never been good enough, probably still isn't, but there's Token Makers. But I don't know. These cards each seem somewhat powerful and interesting. I don't know if they're there for modern, but maybe somewhere else. Now, Young Pyromancer is not legal in Pioneer, right?
I think you're right.
But it is
or
legal
is it?
in, I think it was in M14.
Yeah, 14.
So it's not in Pioneer, but it is in Historic.
Yes. I think.
Historic
yes.
is about different stuff.
It's definitely in Historic.
Man, I can't believe I have not seen a young Pyromancer on Arena in so long.
Yeah.
Probably for the best.
Shall we talk about the last charm we got? Just to
Do
finish.
we have to?
I mean, we'll just finish. We'll acknowledge that it exists.
Go ahead.
It's Broker's Charm. It's the Bant Charm. It's an instant. You can choose one of the following 3 modes. Target creature you control gets +1/+0 until end of turn. It then deals damage equals to its power to target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. So you get the one-sided fight effect.
Clear shot
effect. You can destroy target enchantment, or you can draw 2 cards. So, weirdly, while Esper Charm back in the day had drawing 2 cards, now the Bant Charm gets it.
I mean, so does Archmage's Charm. Also has draw 2 cards.
Yeah, drawing 2 cards, it doesn't matter where you're at. As long as you're not in black or red, you get it. Destroying target enchantment, I mean, basically, this is not super powerful for the cost. Maybe for drawing 2 cards, it's fine, but I don't think it's going to see a lot of play.
Quick update from my editors. My boss just is in my ear. Young Pyromancer is Pioneer legal.
Oh, okay. Thanks for checking.
M14 is Pioneer legal.
Okay.
Man, we're really bad at knowing what's in Pioneer.
Hey, it's right on the edge.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for checking. Thanks to producer.
Stanislav's phone.
Yeah. I think this charm is bad. Am I crazy for thinking this is bad? I mean, I saw a couple people say, well, you can cast it off of Omnath. I'm like, that's great.
Yeah, great. You can cast a lot of better things off on
Yeah, exactly. I don't think this card comes close to being what you want to do in Constructed.
There's another 3-mana...
Then let's never speak of it again.
Yeah, Broker's Charm, forgotten.
There is another one, a spell I do want to talk about. A 3-mana spell. and only because I think the effect is really neat, or rather the mechanic that's on it is really neat, and I think there's implications there. It's Disciplined Duelist. It is a 3-mana banned spell. Creature, human citizen, dive-down citizen. That's a 2/1 with double strike. Disciplined Duelist ETBs with a shield counter on it. What's a shield counter? Essentially, if it would be dealt damage or destroyed, you can remove a shield counter from it instead. So we get, what's that Hearthstone mechanic called? Like Holy Shield or some Divine Shield?
That's a total regeneration effect.
Oh, okay.
Right.
This is just fixed regeneration.
It's a Divine Shield effect.
Yeah.
So,
It's literally Hearthstone Divine Shield, though. Like
Yes.
The same way it works. The fact, you hit them, it goes, that kind of thing.
Sorry, what is Hearthstone?
Good point.
yeah.
The reason it's not regeneration, though, is because if it's dealt damage, it also loses it, even if it's non-lethal damage.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's not exactly regeneration. It's just we've seen regeneration go away.
Yeah.
And maybe this is a space where they play with its return.
but what's cool about this is it's not just a fixed regeneration. Like this having double strike and having the shield is a two great tastes that potentially taste great together.
Yeah.
Right? Because you come in once. Let's say you suit this up with something. You come in once, even if it would get lethal damage or something like that, then it could survive that encounter, and if it kills the opposing creature, then it comes in again off the double strike. So, I mean, effectively, that would be a weird interaction because having first strike would often do the same thing. So it would have to be a particularly niche type experience, but I think that there's something there. There's a reason they designed it with the double strike and the shield counter. I don't think this card is bonkers or potentially even very playable, but I think it's an interesting space that now exists to design in.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's the most interesting about this to me is that it's a human and that it's a Coco hit. Now,
Or a Winota hit.
yeah, or Winota hit too. Yeah.
I think Coco is maybe closer because it's 3 than Winota, personally.
But, I think that the way it's designed is pretty cool, though. You're right, Shane. Can we talk about a weird card
Please.
just for a minute? Devilish Valet, 2 generic and a red for a 1/3 trample haste that has Alliance. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, double Devilish Valet's power until end of turn.
So any other creature, if you storm off with a young Pyromancer on the board,
Right.
or Seasoned Pyromancer, you get 3 creatures.
I mean, it's just so if it's 2,
Dragon Fodder.
4, 8, 16, 32. I mean, it's a little bit, it reminds me of that Pummeler card.
Yeah.
Remember that
Voltaic Pummeler or whatever?
Which is cool. I mean, it's a cool card. This is a total against the odds card. I
Yeah.
mean, would you ever be I have Devilish Valet and Ornithopters and Memnites, and I'm just dropping stuff.
Oh my god. What about this plus Thopter Sword?
Sure. You're doing stuff.
Yeah, well, because it has trample, this is just another way to instant kill a person if you have the Thopter combo going.
Just go, and it just gets gigantic. I mean, I don't know if it's going to see play in any of those shells, but I do feel like where I was hey, here's a free-ish way to do it, and you're no, here's a really free way to do it.
This Urza and Thopter Sword is game. Is Urza plus Thopter Sword just game too? Because Urza plus Thopter combo is infinite mana.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you need a way to win with the infinite mana.
That's the thing.
Oh, you just pay for Urza's ability and draw your whole deck. That's how you do it.
Right.
Weird.
And eventually you draw your Devilish Valet,
And then you kill them.
and then you kill him. We did it.
Yeah. But anyway, this is a total against the odds card that I think people are going to be into. So, Seth, can't wait to see what you do with this card at some point in the
Seth,
future.
we know you're listening.
We know you listen every week, Seth. We're talking about Ween right now. All right.
By the way, early in the episode, we mentioned that the Fort Worth Art Fest is happening outside. There's a chance that maybe you hear a little bit of background music because we're recording in our hotel and there's people playing music behind us. Maybe you don't hear it, and if that's the case, we'll just cut this out.
Right.
But if you do hear it, then we're going to keep this in.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what we're going to discover on this recording from us being 4 feet from one another. So I hope you're dealing with our audio.
This is why we're trying to not overtalk each other this time.
We're going to discover that it's totally fine.
Okay, what's next on everybody's minds?
A card I want to talk about is Mage's Attendant. It's 2 and a white for a cat rogue 3/2. When it ETBs, you create a 1/1 blue wizard creature token with 1 generic mana, sacrifice this creature, and if you do, you can counter target non-creature spell unless its opponent pays 1. So this gets you it gets you 2 bodies for 3 mana, gets you sacrifice fodder, and also gets you a sort of Mausoleum Wanderer type effect. It's not quite as good as Mausoleum Wanderer because that scales to the power of the Wanderer, but it is an interesting ability to get 2 bodies. It gets you 4 power, and it gets you some way to interact with your opponent's spells, maybe take them off their tempo or their game plan. So I don't think this is like slotting into any decks that I'm thinking of right now, but I think that this has some play in lower powered formats, potentially. Or it could just be an awesome Luminate card, either or. But I don't think I've seen anything like this in white, especially like a white card coming in and making a blue token that can then do like a mana tithe type thing.
Yeah, this seems interesting to me too, Shane, with something like Soul Herder, Charming Prince, Ephemerate, being able to make a bunch of those
tokens.
Yeah, just make a bunch of those wizards in your white blinky deck.
I mean, that's something. It is something. I just wanted to point it out. I thought it was an interesting card. The art style is really wild. It's like really naturalist, but then like a cat rogue with like a saber behind her head. So it's a wild one.
Now you're an art critic?
Yeah.
Well, we are at the Arts Festival.
Wow. Mona Lisa smiling over here.
Exactly. All right, how about Evolving Door, which is an artifact, rare, 2 generic and a green. It has an activated ability that is 1 generic, tap, sacrifice a creature, count the colors of the sacrificed creature, then search your library for a creature card that's exactly that many colors plus 1.
Okay.
Exile that card, then shuffle. You may cast the exile card. Activate only as a sorcery.
Oh.
Okay. So when I started reading this card,
Yes.
I thought that this was a different thing because people have been talking about this on Twitter, and they were like, "Oh, this is really cool," blah 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 blah. But then at the end it says you may cast the card, and I was expecting it to say,
Right.
put it into play.
Yes. That's kind of an important thing for cards like this, typically.
I don't know how you could make this that fun or fast unless it doesn't cheats at something into play. So I would say at us at the dive down on Twitter if we're not understanding the hype around this.
Yeah, my initial impression is also pretty bearish. I think it's overcorrected.
Yeah.
It's an overcorrected pod, ultimately.
Got a lot of those floating around.
And really, the question is whether or not an overcorrected pod is still good enough.
Right.
And we've seen that not make the cut on that old card from...
You're talking about Vanifar?
Yeah, Vanifar. Like, Vanifar ultimately didn't make the cut.
I mean, I do have a 5-0 with Vanifar. I'm just saying.
Pyre of Heroes didn't make the cut.
A little more surprised that one didn't do it, too. This one, to me, is like, whoa, no.
All right, as long as we're talking about 3-mana spells, I think we should talk about one of the new Planeswalkers. It's Nixilis, the Adversary. 1 black, red for a 3 loyalty walker. It sort of has a static ability. It's Casualty X. The copy isn't legendary and has starting loyalty X. So if you sack a creature...
If you sacrifice like a 3 power creature, you get another Nixilis with another 3 loyalty.
Correct.
And then 4 power, 4 loyalty, etc.
Or 1 power, 1 loyalty.
Why not?
Yeah, that's also true.
It's still a free It's free Planeswalker.
Free Planeswalkers.
+1, each opponent loses 2 life unless they discard a card. If you control a demon or devil, you gain 2 life. -2, create a 1/1 red devil creature token with when this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. And -7, target player draws 7 cards, loses 7 life. So I think the sequencing here is you make a copy. With one of the walkers, you make the devil. With the other walker, you plus do the gain and drain, and then you party. And then you try to gain and drain with both walkers forever more.
I mean, it works out. I think there are plenty of instances where you just make 2 Ob Nixilises and just plus them both and don't care about the life gain.
Yeah.
Right. So
maybe,
you can get pretty aggressive if you're
Yep.
like, I paid 3 mana for this thing where I'm just going to, until you deal with 2 different permanents, I'm going to deal 4 damage to you every turn is for no mana.
Yeah.
And no attacking is pretty interesting.
It is.
And then people are going to do wild stuff to try to be able to do that ultimate as fast as possible for sure. But, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know if that'll be worth it, but
Yeah, my hesitance here is that you're giving your opponent the choice, but maybe like if you look at it from I want my opponent to discard end of things. I don't think people are going to do that very often. I think that a card is often worth 2 life unless you've been pressuring them.
Yeah.
So I think that, like, let's say in Rakdos Midrange, which again I was playing this weekend in Pioneer, I look at this and I'm like, this isn't doing enough for my mana because, like, 2 life, I'm not killing them until like turn 10 or something like that typically. And so they're not going to be trying to shred their hand. But I like where you're coming from, where it's like, if I'm in an aggressive deck and I can sacrifice one of my tiny or small size creatures that I've been flooding the board with or trying to be aggressive with, then getting a card or 2 cards or 4 life out of them can be pretty significant.
yeah.
Dave, I hadn't considered one of the things that you're talking about that's got my juices flowing a little bit, which is the type of shenanigans you can do to make that X casualty as high as possible. You know, can you do Through the Breach, Emrakul, swing with Emrakul, sack her to this? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's pretty funny.
Sack her to this, draw 7 cards.
I think you absolutely will try to do stuff like that. I also think people might try this with like Monastery Swiftsphere. If you're like, okay, I'm gonna cast some spells and then I have some mana left over and then I'm gonna drop Ob Nixilis and have 2 planeswalkers. One's 4 mana and one's 5, or one's 4 loyalty and one's 5 loyalty because I sacrificed a giant monasteries. I mean, I don't know, but I do think there's a lot of different ways to make this casualty mechanic do something for this card. And then, you know, if you're in a medium aggressive deck where here's the thing. Do you remember that card? What was that card that you could discard cards or you could take damage or your opponent would draw cards? Do you remember that from Guilds of Ravnica that has Flashbad that people were trying in burn decks for a while in Modern?
Oh, yes, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. And so
The 3 mana one?
the 3 mana one that's like you can cast it twice pretty cheaply. And
Yeah.
It was never good enough.
it was never quite good enough.
Giving people choices is bad.
Giving people choices is bad, but this doesn't cost you any mana to give people choices, and they're threats when you do it over and over again for no mana. And so, yes, this is a Punisher mechanic, but I think it's a lot better than that type of Punisher mechanic, whatever that card is. And you know what? I still ran into that card in Pioneer every once in a while.
Same.
It would drive me crazy.
I did just remember another token maker, which is the 3 mana Chandra that's got the 0 ability to make an elemental token that you sacrifice at the end of the
Doesn't
turn.
it make 2?
I think it does.
Yeah. It makes 2 elemental tokens. So, yeah, that can be really good, too, just for fun. The only problem I have with this is that Ob Nixilis has some real Zoot Suit Riot energy going on in one of these alt arts with that.
A real cherry poppin' daddy.
Yeah, you knew it. He's 3rd wave Ska, obviously, maybe 4th.
Another card that some of these casualty spoilers have gotten me thinking about is Claim the Firstborn
That card.
as another way to enable sack decks to make threaten spells as good as possible.
You remember when people were really upset about Claim the Firstborn, including me, where it's just like, oh god, this card's everywhere. I got Claim the Firstborn on Arena like 2 nights ago when I was playing Historic, and I was like, oh man, I did not miss that.
Yeah. Scrap Heap Scrounger, Bloodsoaked Champion.
Yeah.
I think
Bloodsoaked Champion.
I think there's something here for sack decks in general that might be getting like some nice upgrades.
I think it's a lot of things for sack decks, and this set is just depending on what type it is. Is it the turbo sack, make a lot of little things like cat food token thing, or is it something more along the lines of what you're talking about, which is creatures with decent power returning from the graveyard, but a little bit bigger than the Oni cult kind of thing?
Yeah.
All right, another 3-drop I want to briefly ask you all about is on Scryfall, it's translated as Professional Facebreaker. It's
Yeah.
2 in a red for a human warrior, 2/3 with Menace. Whenever one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, make a treasure token. Man, they really love putting treasure tokens everywhere these days. If you sacrifice a treasure, well, you can sacrifice a treasure to exile a top card of your library, and you may play that card this turn.
That's what that card is actually called. That's not the Scryfall, because there's an English version on Scryfall as well. It's called Professional Facebreaker.
Awesome. I love it.
Card's cool. I don't know where it lives.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. There's a lot of treasure tokens out there these days. In this economy, you're making treasure. And using the treasure, rather than, if you have the mana, being able to play cards from your library seems pretty good. Because when that is the case, when you want to get fuel, you likely have enough access to mana where the treasure tokens can be superfluous. So then you're able to say, okay, well, I don't need the mana, I do need the cards to use my lands. And so, again, this is not some breaking open the modern format type card, but I think it's an interesting card that has the ability to do something.
Yeah, I mean, the Menace actually helps out a lot on this card, because even though it's got a kind of not great body for 3 mana, the Menace makes it so that it has some evasion and you can get tricky and try to get damage in with it and play a pretty aggressive game with it on its own still. And it makes tokens on its own when you attack with it. So if you can maintain that like lopsided creature matchup and get it through, you get a treasure off of this on its own. So it does do all of the things that you want it to do by itself, which is kind of nice as well.
Yeah, self-contained engine.
But I think this is more Pioneer-ish to me than it is Modern-ish for what it's worth.
As we're sort of approaching the end of cards that we wanted to talk about in this episode, I want to jump all the way ahead to the 6 mana slots. On the topic of self-contained engines and overcorrected birthing pods, it's Vivien of the Hunt.
Vivien
On the
hunt.
Not of the hunt. She's on the hunt.
Vivien is hunting for things.
Yeah.
4 green for a 4 loyalty walker. +2, you may sack a creature. If you do, search your library for a creature with mana value equal to 1 plus the sacked creature's mana value. Put on the battlefield, shuffle. +1, mill 5 cards. Put any number of creature cards milled this way into your hand.
That's pretty good.
That's really good. And then finally, -1, create a 4/4 green Rhino Warrior creature token. No ultimate here, but you make a Rhino, a 4/4 that's probably going to do a pretty good job of protecting Vivien, and then on the very next turn, you can start a slow chain of you sack the Rhino, get a 1-drop, eventually you can sack the 1-drop, get a 2-drop, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't seem like the best line of play, perhaps, but the +1 to like maybe draw 5 cards.
Yeah.
Seems really interesting.
This card is really expensive, though.
Yeah.
6 mana.
Who cares, though?
I mean, yeah.
What is mana?
You know, I think it depends on what kind of deck you're playing, because if you are doing something that's rampy, you know, and then you have mana birds that you can sacrifice to her plus when you're done with it, you can start a chain that way that goes from 1 to 2. And then, you know, the thing that keeps this from being abused is that there aren't a lot of ways to have a planeswalker activate more than once in a turn. And so you can't do the like Vanifar, speaking of Vanifar and Birthing Pod, you can't do the Vanifar thing where it was like, okay, I'm going to sacrifice a 1-drop and then I'm going to go get Corridor Monitor and then I'm going to untap Vanifar and then I'm going to use that to go get a 3-drop that untaps and then you work your way up the chain. I don't know what the infinite combo might be here or the kill combo might be, but the abilities of this Planeswalker are really powerful. It's been a while since we've seen a 6-mana Planeswalker get too much play in Modern in particular, but there could be something going on here.
It doesn't have to be Modern.
Yeah, it could be a powerhouse in Standard for what it's worth, I think, this one. But it's really good.
Speaking of potential powerhouse Planeswalkers in Standard and maybe a little bit more, just briefly want to touch on Elspeth Resplendent.
Mostly because I want to talk about how fabulous the art is for these. I think it's fun.
These are really good. Like, it's like a Flapper Elspeth, sort of.
Yeah, there's like a Flapper one, and then there's like a Queen of Industry, kind of like 30s deco one, and it's good.
I mean, yeah, these are great. The Elspeth is 3 white, 5 loyalty. you can. She reminds me a little bit of like Elspeth's Knight Errant in that she's creature based, and those abilities are the plus is choose up to one target creature. You can put a 1/1 counter and a counter from among flying, first strike, lifelink, and vigilance on it. The minus is a -3. Look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may put a permanent card with mana value 3 or less from among them onto the battlefield with a shield counter on it, and you put the cards in the bottom of your library in a random order. Then the -7, which you get to in 2 turns, or I guess 3, you create 5 3/3 white angel creature tokens with flying. So this is sort of in a tough spot where it's not going to go in an aggressive white deck because the mana value, is so high. But if you have a mid-range deck that is in white, like Selesnya or something like that, and this is your top end, this is going to close the game out. Like you're blocking with it, you're plussing it on when you can, you're minusing it to get cards out of your library. If you can ultimate it, it's going to close the game really quickly. It is 5 mana.
Yeah. That's how you can play it in Pioneer.
Yeah.
Or maybe Standard. Let me tell you how you can play it in Modern.
Please.
Heliod combo she can search up either Spike Feeder or Heliod with her minus. Mm-hmm. And then if you want to play a value game, you can do the pluses. You can add a counter to get some stuff started with her.
Adding a
with
counter
her
is good,
+1, which is good too. But the big thing here is it's something that adds counters and also lets you dig 7 cards for either of your combo pieces if you're in a spot.
Yeah, will it go in those decks?
Nope,
probably not. But I think it's a cool Elspeth design. I like going back to the, Elspeth she's always made creatures or sort of been creature interactive in a lot of ways, but I like this self-contained engine type model, and she looks great. So welcome back, Elspeth. Cut your losses? Should we cut our losses right here? The 4 blue casualty 2 target player mills half their library rounded down. I feel like this is one of those ones that like half sounds like a ton, but when you're casting it for 6 mana, it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, this card is. And also to really make it go to get 75% of someone's deck away, you have to have a creature, and Mill doesn't have creatures.
Yeah, it has crabs.
Right, but it doesn't have power.
Nope.
It has toughness.
Yep. So
casualties power.
It's an impressive sounding text line, but I think it's probably not worth thinking about.
Do you guys want to get out of here and talk about Dallas?
Yep.
Yeah.
There's going to be more cards to talk about from New Capenna, of course. 2 mechanics that we did not touch on while we were here that we don't have to talk about right now. One is Hideaway is in the set again. Look out for broken Hideaway things that can happen. We'll see. We'll take a look. We'll be on. I don't think there is one yet, but we'll look. And then the other one is Blitz, which is also a cool mechanic that lets you do a lot of kind of different aggressive things, but we will look for better and more interesting cards for that in the coming releases.
Yeah. All right, let's take a really quick break, and then when we return, we'll recap some of the fun memories we made here in SCGCON Dallas. Technically, we are in Fort Worth. I haven't stepped foot in Dallas city limits, but you know what? I don't mind, because I love it here. Stay with us. And we're back. I just had a delicious oats and granola bar.
I didn't think you were going to eat the whole thing.
Courtesy of Shane. It wasn't that big. What did you think I was going to do?
Well, we're going out to dinner after this. I thought you just needed a little pick-me-up.
Eating that bar is going to let me eat more food at dinner.
That's a good point.
I'm getting warmed up. So let's talk about SCG Dallas.
Yeah.
We did one of my absolute favorite things, which is we brought our microphones to the tournament floor. Although we didn't interview any other attendees as we did during the Vegas episode, we did get a chance to sit down, you and I, Shane.
Yes.
And chat a little bit about what we saw and experienced on Friday and what we were getting prepared to do on Saturday.
Today.
Well, we don't know when the listeners will be listening.
That's a good point.
So let's just take a break to check in with our past selves, see what our bright-eyed, optimistic versions were thinking about on Saturday morning, and then we're going to come back, and Dave will join us, and we'll recap the basically the whole weekend.
Yeah. So, doodle-doo, doodle-doo, doodle-doo. So Stanislav.
Shane, we out here. We're technically in Fort Worth. All the Dallas signage is really starting to tick me off. Dallas is like 40 miles away.
It's the broader metropolitan area.
Yeah.
But when I did, it was a 35-minute cab ride from the airport to here, so I felt a little bit duped.
Did you?
Yeah.
We arrived yesterday. It is currently Saturday morning. It is about 9:25 a.m.
Yes.
We've lost David.
Well, we haven't lost him. We know where he is. He's just not with us.
Allegedly, he's playing in the 9 o'clock main event.
No. It's just a side event modern challenge.
Apparently, he's playing in the 9 a.m. modern challenge.
Yeah.
Good to know.
So yeah, he's doing the side event. We're waiting till the 10 a.m. Pioneer.
That's right.
Side event. We're the Pioneer boys now.
This will be my first time playing Paper Pioneer against other people since
Ever.
maybe January, February of 2020. Maybe, if not before.
So let's first talk about our day yesterday. Not the travel, although that was smooth and enjoyable. So the hall, I was here before the hall opened because I got in at like about 11:30 and doors were opened at noon. And when we got here,
it was chaos.
Well, it wasn't really chaos,
Pandemonium.
but it was. There was. They made the interesting decision to start some events right at 12:30, and so that was tight. It was surprising. It sounds like a lot until you're on the floor. Everything sounds like a lot of time until you're here, and then it sounds like not enough time.
Right.
And then, unless you're waiting between rounds, in which it's just an eternity that just passes.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
The way time works that way.
Yeah, time is very relative. So I played because Dave and Stanislav were not here yet. So I decided to get my yayas out and get a Flesh and Blood side event in at 12:30.
What'd you play?
I played Chain.
That's your deck.
That's just the deck. Here's the problem. Everyone else who is into Flesh and Blood plays it more than I do, and they're getting much better than I am.
The game, not Chain specifically.
Yeah, they're getting better at the game. So I think the average player, even in the past 3 to 4 months since I've been playing, is getting better than I am getting better.
And I wonder if part of that's because there's no real online client that allows you to practice.
Yeah.
So it really benefits the people who have the time and resources to get out to their shops to play Fab in person as often as possible.
I think a lot of people, they do play on Tabletop Simulator, which is effectively it's not sponsored, but it's effectively A-OK with Legend Story Studios. That there's the Tabletop Simulator event, and module rather, and people will play online armories and events either by webcam or sometimes even through TTS. And so I think a lot of people who are more dedicated are doing a lot of those webcam events, doing a lot of those TTS events, which makes you appreciate somehow Magic the Gathering online because of the fact that you have built-in stakes, a built-in client that is cheat-proof, error-proof, error-proof beyond bugs.
Sure. So Tabletop Simulator, as I understand it, it's not a rules engine. It's just
it's just
canvas.
literally it's just a canvas, yeah.
And it's interesting to hear you say that that the publisher essentially condones use of TTS because people who play on TTS, they just have every card.
Essentially, yeah. So it's like you can't really win anything through playing with fake cards.
Okay.
Effectively. So anyway, long story short, no one wants to hear about Flesh and Blood first thing on this podcast, but I did a side event. Didn't do great, but the caliber of players I played against felt pretty good. I went 1-2.
Did you learn?
That's the important thing. Got to take something away. I did learn.
Okay, good.
Because I played. It's just like in Magic, where you play against a matchup that you haven't played a lot against, and you're just like, I think I know what this does. I think I have an idea of how this matchup plays out, but I didn't really. And so I walked away from that game having a greater understanding of that matchup.
That's important. How do you feel about all the... I know you just said we're not going to talk about Fab, but I have more Fab questions.
Please.
How do you feel about all the... Oh, wait a second. Standard challenge. Is that us?
No. I will say, so the main event here, before we do our fab digression.
Thank you.
So the main event here today already has over 900 of the 1,000. There's a 1,000 cap. I saw 908 as of this morning when I was doom scrolling on my phone in the hotel room. And so I think that's going to fill up.
Yeah.
And thankfully, we decided not to play it, like we said on last episode, because we want to have a little bit more flexibility in our schedules.
I just want to stretch my legs.
Yeah, it's nice to get up.
Our hotel is so close that
It's so close.
we'll probably talk about this some more in a minute, but I was able to actually go to our room between rounds of a side event that I did yesterday.
Yeah,
It was that close.
twice. You
Yeah.
you took a nap.
I basically did. But here's my last fab question.
Yeah.
How do you feel about the naming conventions of their tournament structure? And doesn't it feel a little too inside? The culling, the armory, the Saskatchewan.
Yeah, it's funny. You're right. It's not transparent to new people,
Yeah.
but once you know it, you know it. So it's kind of like, but there's no equivalent to Magic. Like there's no special FNM. There's no special like style of game night. I think it's basically they basically gave a name to going to your LGS on a weeknight. It's just an
Yes.
armory event.
It sort of forces you to look at an infographic that explains what are the names of these things, why they're named a certain way, and where they exist on an organized play ladder system or pyramid system or scheme.
Scheme, if you will.
Yes.
So anyway, I did that, and then you all showed up when I was playing that, so that was great. Got to see you all, and you and Dave had an important lunch.
We had a really good business lunch. We talked about some business things.
Yeah,
But we ate fairly quickly because we wanted to play in a 4 p.m. Modern Challenge.
yeah, we all did that.
And now Modern Challenges at SCGCON, they're not like the weekend morning events that happen on Moto.
No.
This is what they just call the side events here. It's
Yeah.
3 rounds.
You get tickets based on how many rounds of those 3 you win, and so of course you want to win as many as possible so that you can get your Chuck E. Cheese
Yeah,
tickets to go cash it on the prize wall.
right. Or cash into people who are buying prize vault ticks, which is a cottage industry
Oh, yeah.
at these events.
Here's the thing: like I don't know like what I'm supposed to be doing over by the people with the ticket. I'm like I want to buy some tickets right now. Like there's a certain playmat I want to get. And I don't know if like I'm supposed to like just flash some cash, like tap it against my hand.
Maybe you can put a little sign on a stick.
I mean, yeah, I need 100 tickets. Please.
Dollars for ticks.
Yeah, I mean that's probably not condoned, but it'll be okay.
Can I tell you about my Modern Challenge?
That's the most important thing. We've been talking for 8.5 minutes before we've even talked about Magic the Gathering. So
Is that what we're here to do, though? I had a great little Modern Challenge to start the weekend. It's almost analogous to this episode of Entourage. Remember the episode of Entourage where they go to Las Vegas, and as soon
no,
as
I
they
never
walk
watched any
in,
Entourage. It's my loss.
it sure is. As soon as they walk in, they put $10 on red, and if they win their money back in roulette, they know they're going to have a good weekend. I kind of did that with a Modern Challenge yesterday, where I signed up and I went 3-0, 4-0.
What's the 4? Oh yeah. Okay, so you won.
An unusual record.
4-0. That's weird.
Yeah, round 1 I got paired against Mill. I'm on Is It Murktide.
That seems okay for you.
I had a couple turn 2 8-8 flyers that
Got the job done.
got the job done quick, and that was the first time I realized I have 30 minutes between rounds to go to the hotel and lighten up my backpack and dip my toes in a warm bath. Round 2 I played against Infect, another 2-0.
Yeah.
A little bit more of a grindy matchup, but I still got the job done. And then round 3 rolls around, and my opponent doesn't show up. I get the win by default.
That's what's amazing because it had to be a 2. They were also 2-0.
Theoretically, yeah.
And so that I'm guessing that they wanted to make the modern special challenge where you get like higher EV.
Maybe. There's a host of different possible explanations.
Yeah.
And
They were hungry.
yeah, it's hard to know the truth.
Their flight left really early on Friday for some reason.
Something that's true of this event that we did not experience in Vegas, I don't think it was active in Vegas yet, is all the pairings for all of your events
Yeah.
are sent through to your telephone via the MTG Companion app.
Yes.
And what's nice about the convention center is there is free Wi-Fi because service is essentially non-existent. but you constantly have to
Well,
re-log into the companion app.
We're stealing it. We're stealing the Wi-Fi from a hotel.
What?
Yeah, no, there's no Wi-Fi provided here.
Shane, lower your voice.
Well, I mean,
We're stealing packets of data?
it doesn't. It basically it does not say you must be a guest of this hotel to use this free Wi-Fi.
You read the term of service?
Yeah, I read the entire terms of service, the end user license agreement, EULA, if you will.
Yeah, so your guess is as good as mine, but that was a fun way to start. I got 450 tickets.
which I then promptly purchased off you.
I did the math, and I doubled up on my entry.
Yeah, there you go.
Is ultimately what happened. So
That's good EV, baby.
that is how you make it to the top brackets of competitive play. Is you just got to nickel and dime your way to positive EV.
And then so I think about that sometimes, where it's like, okay, if I ever a positive EV at an event, I only have to do that about 795 times before I've made up my modern purchase collection. My modern purchase is like it's worth it at that point. Like I've made the money back.
Yeah. So you mentioned that we're going to play the Pioneer Challenge in about 30 minutes. What are you playing in Pioneer today?
Well, I'll answer that question. Then I'm going to go back to my modern event.
Oh yeah.
So I was fully planning on coming in doing mono red in Pioneer, and that's one reason is because it's very similar to a lot of mono red decks that I have played and enjoyed in the past. I mean, I played mono red in Pioneer 2 years ago at GP Phoenix, and it's always been a fun deck. I like the new Chandra 3 a lot. I think she's really fun. I think you were right on when you in our spoiler episode you mentioned her plussing up, enabling Spectacle, giving you the mana to cast a Spectacle spell all before combat.
Yeah.
With prowess creatures.
Yeah.
Is really potent and really good, and it works like how you want it to very often.
Right, with light up the stage in particular. Like Skewer is cool because you feel like you're just doing actual burn spells.
Yeah.
But if you have a Swift Spear out, turn 3 Chandra, tick her up, get light up the stage. You're probably not casting anything off that light up the stage, but now you have as much as 4 to 5 mana on the next turn to do whatever you want with what you draw.
Yeah. So I have liked messing around with that. There's like actually a really similar historic deck that doesn't have Eidolon, doesn't have Monastery Swizzpier. It doesn't have those powerful spells. But it plays really similar. It's a lot of fun to play. I played Arena for the first time like in 6 weeks the other night, and I enjoyed playing that.
What cards does it play instead? Is it a clean like swap of 4 for 4?
I don't remember.
I wonder if it's just like DRC and Unholy Heats.
It's not that, which is surprising. But enough about what I'm not playing, because I decided last night when we were doing a little bit of practice after dinner, I was like, there's no time like the present to learn how to play this Rakdos mid-range style deck. And it's a lot of fun. It played really well. Like I felt like, there's some games where you did get under me, and those felt fair. And there were some games where I got the board locked down. I started getting a lot of value out of my 2-for-1s, out of my removal spells.
Dude, yeah, and your Graveyard Trespassers.
Those were a lot of fun.
That was perhaps the most impressive card for me to see you play yesterday. I'd never played against it, and it's just Tarmogoyf. It's Pioneer Tarmogoyf that gains you life.
I mean, it doesn't grow from the graveyard, but it's Tarmogoyf sized.
Yeah, it's essentially a Goyf in Pioneer terms.
I mean, it also costs 3 mana.
You have to adjust for inflation based on the size of the format.
We're seeing mana value creep. It's going up, not down. So when we were playing last night, I really enjoyed the deck. I thought Graveyard Trespasser was dope. I mean, if I could have a deck where I can cast Chandra 4, I can cast Kalidas again, that was good. You know what was so surprising for me was how good the slow dual lands felt in a mid-range deck. They felt like basically most of the time when you play, even playing 4 of them, I mean, it was a small sample size, but it never felt like it was in my way. Where I was like, "Oh man, this is terrible."
The other thing I was really impressed by is the new Kiki Jiki saga.
Yeah, it's value.
The amount of damage that enabled you to push through, and the occasional ETB triggers off the Trespasser
that was
that
cool.
it enabled, was kind of scary, and it felt like a must-kill as soon as you flip it into a saga.
Yeah.
I think you never kill the Shaman, but they try to kill the Goblin as quickly as you can. You get a creature, you get hand filtering, and then you get a kind of on-demand clone, which is
pretty cool. Like, so all of those things combined add up to a surprising amount of value out of a 3-drop. It does feel like I wish it was like 2.5. Do you know what I mean? Where it's like, it's sort of, it feels fair for 3. It would feel amazing at 2.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like a Pioneer power level card where it's like, hey, this is what you're going to play in a mid-rangey deck at 3 mana, and it's going to feel okay.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned that you played Modern yesterday as well?
Oh yeah, Modern yesterday. I guess we forgot to talk about that. So that I tried to take it easy after thinking hard through some Fab games. I was like, I want to cruise for a while. I played Boros Burn, and it had a really fun event and also close games. So like my opponents were all some of like this really the classic opponent you want, like fun to play against. Good little table banter, just playing some cards.
Yeah.
And
Naruto headband.
Yes, exactly. I played against Azorius Control, and that was a close one. They took that. I then beat Murktide.
Hey now.
Then
that's the match you're supposed to win.
You think so?
As a burn player, yeah.
Okay, that's fine. I did win it. And
Good.
when you're here's a pro tip. When you're
for me or the listeners?
For the listeners. If you're at these side events,
because I don't want to hear it.
If you're 1-1, okay, going into round 3, if you lose and you go 1-2, you get 30 tickets, which is like not very much. It's like maybe like
it's $3. Yeah.
And you spent $20 to get in.
22 with sales tax.
Exactly. So what the pro move, in my opinion, is to politely ask your opponent if they're interested in splitting, because then you both get 90.
Yes.
So that's just kind of better EV overall.
Can we do just a quick little role play of how you can politely ask someone to split in that position? So let's say I'm sitting down, I'm your opponent, round 3.
Yeah.
I'm, gingerly grabbing my deck box out of my backpack, just trying to eyeball you a little bit, figure out your vibe.
I'm an imposing figure across the table.
Trying to figure out why you're not wearing a Naruto headband.
Yeah.
So how's the tournament going for you?
It's great. Having a great day. Where are you in from?
Des Moines.
Des Moines. I love Des Moines. It's my favorite town in Iowa.
I hate Des Moines.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, you're trying to move?
I'd leave any chance I can get.
Well, I have some good friends in Des Moines, and I'll...
Charlie?
I'll introduce you to them. But...
do you know Gwendola?
Since we're 1, are you 1-1?
Yes.
Then are you interested in splitting? So we both get 90 tickets instead of 30 potentially.
I need to call a judge. Are you bribing me? Is this a bribe?
I'll pay you $5 to split. Don't do this. But anyway, yeah, most people get it unless it's like the very first one. And we put it out, which is the fun part.
More importantly, I think a lot of people are willing to split round 3 because of the way the schedule works at events this. That it's just kind of nice to just like get in and get out as quickly as possible.
Yeah. But so it was a fun event. I played Yawgmoth round 3, even though we drew, and I haven't played a lot of Yawgmoth versus Burn. It seems like it's a pretty cozy matchup for Burn, but I could be wrong. I think there's ways to gain life, but you have to get there.
Yeah.
So. I'm looking forward to our Pioneer events in 15 minutes, so we should probably get ready for that. But I think I see
a wild David.
I think I see a wild David. Dave, do you want to get on this real fast?
It looks like he's eating a breakfast hot dog.
Yeah, so we should get prepped for the Pioneer event. Make sure I have all my cards in order, and we'll reconnect between rounds, perhaps.
I hope so. Okay. Maybe I'll spot you at the hotel room in 30 minutes.
Yeah, let's go take a break. All right, man, I love us.
I'm so glad Dave wasn't there.
What's funny, he was like 6 feet away.
Until he walked over and quietly, awkwardly sat next to us, staring at us about why he's not on the show.
I thought that was it for me. I really thought that this was going to be it.
Yeah. But guess what, Dave? You're rehired.
Amazing. I thought I was going to have to pay for this flight and hotel room myself, and then turns out we're good.
No, You're good. So Saturday was kind of the day we had the most time because we were here all day. Mm-hmm. So we got to the tournament center bright and early, about 9-ish. We decided, Dave got there. We got breakfast and there in time for Dave to play the 9 a.m. Modern Challenge.
Yeah.
So what were you running today, Dave?
So yesterday I played Grixis Death Shadow, and today I played Grixis Death Shadow in the morning, and it's been going fine.
Yeah.
Ish. Not great.
Are you doing the 4-color stuff that we've suddenly has been sweeping the nation?
I mean, I was thinking about it. If I was going to play the main event, I decided not to play the main event and just played side things instead. And so I just stuck with Grixis. So I'm just playing Kaito and kind of trying to keep it simple. Turns out for the side events, you don't have to worry about Cascade and side events. Nobody's bringing that for fun to a 3-round tournament.
Yeah.
But
Maybe not at the tables you're at.
Yeah.
Maybe at the top tables.
Yeah, at the top
There's more
tables.
cascading.
Well, true. I mean, I kind of went like 1 and 2 and 1 in the one yesterday afternoon, and then I went 1 and 1 in the one that I did this morning with Shadow. I think I played okay. I don't think it was anything great. I did lose to Burn a couple of times, and that was pretty rough, playing that Burn versus Grixis Shadow classic matchup.
It's a real burn meta down here.
I played against Burn 3 different times in side events out of the 8 matches I've played. So
people want those fast games. They want a lot of breaks between rounds.
Yeah, Dave, I got to say, in retrospect, I wish I joined you for that 9:30 Modern, because what ended up happening with me and Shane, we played a 10 a.m. Pioneer Challenge.
right.
Yeah.
And we wanted to play Modern at, I want to say it was 12:30.
Yeah, basically it was 12:30, and it was full by just when we finished our Pioneer event.
Yeah.
Because we both drew with our opponents round 3, and then immediately announcement from above, call from the heavens, the event has been filled.
Yeah. Yeah. So I ended up just playing Pioneer twice today, and I only got to play Modern once the whole weekend.
Yeah.
I brought so many Modern decks.
I brought so many modern cards.
I brought an entire shelf on wheels that I've been just wheeling around the convention hall. My mobile shelf.
Yeah, a tough neck case or whatever they call it.
Yeah, I hope you didn't do that. I didn't notice that.
You didn't notice the giant shelf I was wheeling around with my 4,000 Modern decks?
Is it Calyx? Is it your favorite IKEA or your second favorite IKEA?
It's the Calyx that I have the little wheels attached to on the bottom.
I love it.
They cost extra.
So, but Dave, since you did play a lot of Shadow this weekend, did you feel like you learned anything new about it? Like, what were your experiences like? Like, what are you thinking about it?
And which version of Shadow did you actually play?
So I was saying I played Grixis with Kaito in it, and I think that the deck is plenty solid right now. I just think that I guess the stuff that I learned the most is like trying to calibrate how aggressive you can be with fetch shocking. Basically, just continuing to like hone on that, like versus different types of decks, what's okay and what's not okay, and how close to the sun can you fly when you're Burn, and how much work are they going to do for you when you can play your big Death Shadow. I mean, it's amazing how much Death Shadow, when you throw it down, can stabilize your board state, even if you're behind, just by being a gigantic blocker that they can't attack into anymore until you can kind of set yourself up to go forward. Learned a lot more about the power of dress down, the power of dive down, but also just dress down being such a really excellent card for enabling so many different things in that deck, and often siding it in an extra one in different matchups where it doesn't seem like you'd really want it.
Yeah.
I had fun playing Shadow for sure. And then this afternoon I played in the 12:30, I played the challenge bonus or the double challenge that you guys couldn't get into. And I played that Obosh Boros Prowess list that I was messing around with towards the end of last year that we talked to Carolyn Cavanaugh about on the episode that we had her on for. And that was good too. I mean, I only went 1-2 with it, but I had a couple of really close matchups. I lost a heartbreaker against Gruul really in the third round, beat Burn, and lost a really close matchup to Hammer in the first round, actually, which I usually feel really good about Hammer, but I had one of those ones where they let off with
Sentinel.
Not Sentinel, Invec. Yeah, Invec both times, and I just never drew into white removal.
Yeah. Brutal.
So, and this was a pretty mid-rangey Boros deck where I wasn't even running Lava Dart or anything like that. I was focusing more on a little bit bigger deck.
So, Dave, thanks for the the brief on your Modern experiences.
My very average Modern experiences.
So what was your final record? Was it...
Don't put him on the spot like that.
I mean, it's not good. It's like 3-4-1, I guess. 3-5-1, something like that.
Okay. So we have some room to improve. We have some opportunities to learn. Would you keep focusing on Shadow? Do you want to actually pay a little more attention to Boros? Or did you see something else that was so impressive that you may even want to change your priorities altogether?
Well, I am going to play one more challenge tomorrow morning, and I think I'm going to switch my deck up completely and go play Murktide for fun.
Ooh, yeah.
And to see how that goes. I've had all the cards for this deck for such a long time. Ostensibly, I've told people for a long time that Counterspell and Lightning Bolt are my favorite cards. Let's go play the deck that has them.
Dave, wait until you resolve an expressive iteration.
Well, I mean, I am using expressive iteration in Shadow.
Wait until you do that again tomorrow morning. You're going to love it.
Yeah, it's going to be great. I'm mostly looking forward to casting Counterspell for the first time in a sanctioned match of Magic in, I don't know, 16 years?
Oh, man.
Well,
probably more.
So, Stanislav, you and I, as we've hinted at, we're the Pioneer Boys now. We played a lot of.
I don't love your labels.
Yeah, I'm slapping that label on you.
I'm just
me,
a casual spike.
We're 100% Pioneer Boys.
I'm just trying to get to regionals.
So the real problem with the problem, quote unquote, with these side events is like opponents jump around a lot. There's a lot of people in a lot of events, and people are trying to get to their two-headed giant event with their friend, and so they might drop, or they might just be like, "Hey, do you want to draw?" And because I need to go meet somebody, and it's like, well, yeah, So there's just a lot of that happening, and so I think across the 3 side events I did, I probably had a total of 4 at least games that I just didn't play, or probably 3 I didn't play, and then a 4th that we just drew and played out for fun. So be prepared for that kind of stuff at these type of events. It just happens a lot. So, but if you come wanting to play a ton of Magic, sometimes that can be a little bit disappointing, but that's when you go walk around, look at the vendors, look at the table, see what's going on.
Talk about EV with strangers.
Yeah, exactly. So I was on Red Black all weekend, and I have to say, I haven't been a mid-range player for a while. And
Dave, what do you think about that sentence?
Haven't been a mid-range is dead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right? Mid-range is alive and well.
In Pioneer.
Doesn't Shane love mid-range but hates to admit it?
Well, here's the thing. I like when mid-range can be good, because then you get to there's a few spells you get to play in mid-range that are just really fun.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I think I've been on record that Thoughtseize is my favorite 1-mana spell. I think we had some question like that. What's your favorite 1-mana spell? And I think I said Thoughtseize because you have to think a lot about it, and there's a lot of things that there's a lot of cascading things from that one decision point. And anyway, I thought Rakdos was really great. It felt a lot of fun. It felt pretty helpless against 5-color Niv, but that's what you sign up for. And all in all, my opponents were a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun matches, and I think Rakdos is a great choice for a diverse Pioneer metagame, and I think there's only room to iterate and adapt it. And I think Pioneer was feeling pretty fun this weekend. And I'm excited to play that deck more on the Pioneer leagues, and as players are more excited, and as we're prepping for qualification events. What were your Pioneer events like, Stan?
Similar and a little different. I played 2 today, not expecting that. I only brought 1 Pioneer deck with me. I played mono red.
A little out of character for you, but a reasonable deck to build in Pioneer.
Yeah, I just had it. To be honest, all I was missing was a handful of sideboard cards, and I just picked up some lava coils and redcap melees, and I had the deck.
Nice.
I got those Chandras and the Bugbears early because I thought those cards had promise.
Even in Modern, I've been playing. That's what I was playing in that Boros deck. So
heck yeah, yeah. I had a great time. I finished my first challenge 201. My opponent and I chopped, and my second challenge is when fatigue really set in.
Oh yeah,
and I was getting really sleepy. A weekend of playing a lot of Magic caught up with me, and I went 1 and 2. Mm-hmm. And the win was a bye. But even my 2 losses, I took a game. So
yeah,
it's not like I completely pooped the bed.
Did you feel like you got a grasp on what Pioneer is actually feeling like right now, or are people playing like some rogue decks or things like that?
Great question. I didn't play any rogue decks, and I didn't play the same deck twice, ever. So I played against Winota, which was really good and kind of crushed my dreams.
Yeah.
I played against Rakdos midrange. I played against Spirits. There's one other one that is escaping me right now.
Play against any like Lotus Field or any big mana type strategy?
No Lotus Field.
Phoenix.
No Phoenix. But overall, Pioneer is fun. I mean, if this is the format I'm going to have to focus on if I want to qualify for the regional championship, I won't mind.
Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to exploring it. And I actually think that the format, not only did it get an injection of life because of the support from organized play,
yeah,
but I think with that, we'll see waterfalls of ingenuity from more people paying attention to it and looking for how to tighten up strategies, how to identify new strategies altogether. This new set could have an impact on Pioneer. I think standard sets are more likely to have impacts on Pioneer than they are on Modern. So as long as it doesn't like break again, which Pioneer has kind of seemed prone to in a way, maybe Modern is as well, I don't know. But overall, good weekend. I wish I could have played more Modern, but the Pioneer stuff was fun.
Yeah, I'll get another Modern event in tomorrow with Dave because we're here till the early afternoon. You got to bounce early. But yeah, I think overall, the event, it felt like a lot of other events. Stuff was running on time, at least for start times. I thought the judge staff is always present and there and great. There's enough people to take care of things. Lines were never long. Everything went as smoothly as I would like. I had great opponents. Got to see you all. So all in all, successful trip. Dave, before we get on out of here, you said we got some stats on we should talk about the 30K that's going on here, right?
Yes. Let's do it really quickly here because I know we're all hungry and the event isn't done quite yet. So I'm going to go through, just get your sense of what you think about this meta. So
we could talk about the results when we're all at home, maybe briefly on Monday or something like that.
Yeah, or maybe even next week.
Yeah.
So on MTG Melee, one of the things that's cool is that when things are run on there, people have to label their decks with names. Now, they're not always accurate.
Yeah. So we're trusting people right now.
Right. But however, you do get a sense immediately of what the archetype breakdown is. And so here it is in order. The number one deck registered for this 30K.
Can I guess?
Yes.
Murktide.
I would have guessed Murktide as well.
Okay.
You can also guess Murktide.
Is it Murktide with 88 decks, which is 9% of the field, almost 10% of the field, 9.6% of the field. What about the number two deck? Stan's looking at my screen, so he knows.
I actually didn't see it. It's all a blur. I'm so hungry.
Amulet.
Texas is a burn meta.
It's hot here in Fort Worth during the Arts Festival. It is burn with 8.2% of the meta. So the top two decks by a pretty good margin are Is It Murktide and then followed by Burn. After that, Azorius Control.
Oh, yeah.
With 5.6% of the meta and with the same exact number of decks, 5.6% of the meta. Amulet Titan.
Yeah, wow.
Okay, so the next couple decks that were above 4% are Four Color Blink, that was 4.3%, and Teamer Crashcade, 4.2%. Those are your top six decks. So Murktide, Burn, Blue Eye Control, Titan, Four Color Blink, and Teamer Crashcade. Sounds like Modern.
Where's Living End?
Well, interesting question. If you look at the decks that are hovering around 3%, there's 5 of them that are between 3 and 4%, and those are Golgari Yawgmoth with almost 4%, Living End with close to 3.5%, and Azorius Hammer with the same amount, 3.5%, Mono Green Tron with 3.4%, and Grixis Death Shadow 3.1%. There's your tier 2 kind of decks right now. Apparently, people didn't want to bring Living End after what happened a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. Shane and I were walking around the top tables a little bit too, just to get a peek at what some of the stuff that people are playing.
We're on around 4, I think. So still the Wild West,
no doubt. And in those matchups, we saw a lot of familiar decks at play.
Yep.
And a couple surprises.
Yeah, we saw Simic Infect.
We saw Simic Infect. We saw Spirits.
Spirits
at like table 2.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they were running hot.
Yeah, but then there was a hammer, a Murktide, a Living End at the top tables, a Crash Can at the top tables.
What was the fanciest deck you saw? Because I saw fully foiled Japanese Dredge.
Wow.
I saw a fully foiled Living End.
Wow.
And I playing across from fully foiled 4-color control.
Wow.
That was fancy.
Oof.
Sounds fancy.
Interesting. The last deck that was above 2% of the metagame was Jund.
Wow.
So there were...
I saw a lot of Jund Saga today.
There were 12 decks that were 2% or more of the field. So don't have a running total on that right now. Real quick, before we go, we do one other nice thing about Melee is that it has match win percentages as well.
For decks or players?
For decks. So we can take a look right here now, and the top couple of match win percentages for popular archetypes, the archetypes we were just talking about.
Round 7, round 8?
Sorry?
What round are we through?
I think we're through the day. I think we're on round 7 at least.
Okay.
Golgari Yawgmoth has 60% win percentage today.
Woohoo!
With 35 pilots. 4-Color Blink has a 60% win percentage today with 40 pilots. The next one from there is Living End, 57%. Then Jund with 55%. And Amulet Titan with 53%. Azorius Control with 53%. And Is It Murktide with 51%, basically. The big losers here are the ones that are below 50% or well below 50%. Burn, 47.25%. Mono Green Tron, 43%.
Ooh, that stings.
And the big one that hurts my heart and makes me glad I didn't play the main, Grixis Death Shadow, 33% win percentage today.
Wow.
Woof. A duff. So that's the top level view of the meta today.
Yeah.
So Stan, I know we ran into some people, and I think you were better at remembering names than me. Who did some quick shout outs to people we ran into, people we know that are here?
Oh, yeah. It was so nice. We got to all say hello to friend of the show, Everett.
Yes.
Sparring Spike. When I chatted with him, it was after round 5, and he was still, I think, undefeated on Jeskai Lotus.
I think he was 4-1.
Maybe 4-1.
Yeah, so he was doing well.
He was doing pretty well. But in addition to Everett, we got to hang out with friends of the show, Jay, Andy, Cora, Daryl, Jake, Brent. We haven't seen Brent yet, but we're hoping to.
We'll see Brent.
We're hoping to see Brent.
Yeah, but it's nice to see people that we know and who know us, and that's really the best part about Magic is the gathering. So again, it's great to go to these events. We're glad that they're happening. We're going to try to get to a couple each year if we can. So if you didn't see us at this one, see us in the future, and we'll see you.
If this is your first time listening to The Dive Down, make sure you subscribe and leave us a review over on Apple Podcasts and or Spotify. If you'd like to support the show, you can find our Patreon over at patreon.com/thedivedown. You can also support us with a Mana Trader subscription. Coupon code TheDiveDown2022. Get 15% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards. You can also support us with Barrister and Man.
Barrister and Man, MANN.
Use coupon code TheDiveDown2022. Get 15% off your first order there. As always, thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next week, greetings from Texas!